Good morning, this is Tyler Dawn Rosenquist of the Ancient Bridge, and I'm working on wrapping up the small bites of fruit. And then I'm probably going to not be making videos. It's not something I really enjoy or really feel comfortable with. And I've started writing homeschool curriculum books to teach biblical context to children. I'm incredibly excited about that, and I'm hoping to have those out in a few months. It'll be a history/Bible curriculum. That's not why I brought you here. I want to talk to you about gentleness. Now we look at gentleness in the scriptures, and it's tied to words like meekness, humility, courtesy. And it's much maligned in the online community where gentleness is not really, premium is not placed on gentleness. People want to be, everybody wants to be John the Baptist, but they don't want to be like out in the world preaching to the types of people that John the Baptist was actually, having to deal with. Corrupt people. And he called these people, vipers and stuff face to face for the actual crimes they were committing. But people seem to think that somehow it's a virtue to not be gentle, and yet it's a fruit of the Spirit. That means it is something that comes with keeping God's laws and being obedient and allowing His laws and His Spirit to change us. So we're to be conformed in the image of His Son, and one of the hallmarks of Yeshua was gentleness when it was needed. Now, one of the things Yeshua always did, and somebody who's gentle, I can tell you what they always do. They extend dignity. And if you start extending dignity, watch out, because people out there don't like it when people give credit for credit where credit is due. They want to focus on what a person's doing wrong and not give them any credit whatsoever for what they're doing right. I did a blog post a couple months ago called Setting the Record Straight about Christianity that talked about, there's a Messianic rabbi, his name is David Friedman, I think I got his name right, and he did a breakdown of the Mosaic Law and the percentage that that are actually even keepable right now, and like 58% can't be kept because we don't have a temple or we're not in the land. If we don't have kings, that kind of stuff, they can't be kept. There's nothing we can do about it. To actually try and keep them is sin, because there are things that we can only do if there's a temple, and there are certain laws that can only be kept if you're a priest, that kind of stuff. Of the remaining 42%, 28%, not of the 42, but 28, Christians actually keep. It's important to them. And then Messianics, Hebrew roots people, they only keep 6% of the remaining. So we're looking at judging people for our 6%. That's really what we're talking about. They keep the overwhelming majority of the laws that can be kept today, but we're judging them over, what we keep that's a little bit more. It's not gentle. It's not giving credit where credit was due. And I got accused of a lot of people who completely misrepresented what I was saying. Some people call me an enabler. It's like for giving people credit for what they're doing right and not focusing just on what they're doing wrong. There were others who were very angry at me saying, well, I'm not going to boil the feast out of the Lord and His Sabbaths to a percentage. Well, I wasn't doing that either. People don't want to extend dignity, and I was extending dignity to our Christian brothers and sisters, and yes, they are our Christian brothers and sisters, for showing, they're doing what they know. They're no different than we were. I wasn't not keeping the commandments because I had a rebellious heart. I wasn't keeping the commandment because I had absolutely been trained that keeping those commandments was saying that there was something wrong with our Lord, and that I was trying to be righteous in my own flesh, and now I realize that that only made sense to me because I just never questioned what I'd always been taught. Most people don't. Most Hebrew roots and Messianic people have things that they still don't question because they've just always been taught. So we've got to extend dignity. Gentleness is about extending dignity, and there are people out there who the last thing they want to do is give anyone any shred of dignity as long as those people are doing anything wrong. And then so instead of extending dignity, they shame them. Well, we have to focus on what they're doing wrong. But that's not gentle. It's also not scriptural. It's not scriptural. You know, something that I noticed in reading the letters to the churches in Revelation that were all imperial cult churches living under terrible conditions, where they were actually having to worship the Caesars as gods. Okay, a lot of people don't know that, but each of the 7 cities in the book of Revelation were huge imperial cult centers. These were very difficult places for believers to live and do business and all that stuff once they came to faith in Yeshua. I mean, it was a veritable, minefield of difficult situations. So I want you to read the letters to the churches, and I want you to see something. I want you to see that what Yeshua does first, okay, Jesus, what he does first is he praises those 6 cities, the believing assemblies there, for what they're doing right first. Gives them credit. He extends them dignity for what they are doing right. That was his first message. Then after giving them credit for all the stuff they were doing right, acknowledging all they were doing right, then he takes them to task for the things they're doing wrong. But first he gave them dignity. First he was gentle. You see, people don't want to hear. People don't want to hear us nagging on them and just tearing them down if we haven't built them up first. People want to know that we care. And if we don't care, we have no business talking into their lives at all. If our only task in life is to run roughshod over them as the Torah police, when we're only keeping, and then we're not even keeping them the way that other people think that we should be keeping them. So much in religious life, I mean, Christians do it too, Jews do it too, people do this. They say, well, if you are not keeping the commandments the way I keep them, then I have every right to shame you and not extend you dignity. Well, it's not my job to set myself as the bar. Because if I set myself as the bar, I'm never going to be gentle. I'm going to be cruel. That's just because I'm focusing on me. It's like I have two kinds of people in my life that are part of the modesty movement. Okay? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with modesty. Modesty's great. I wore a head covering for a year. All it did was reveal my pride. So that was good. That was really good. But I have 2 kinds of friends who are involved in the modesty movement. The first kind of friend, they are incredibly modest. They are modest because they're modest. They don't point it out. They don't slam people over the heads with it. They don't judge others according to their modesty standards. And then there are other people, because the modesty is about themselves and how they present themselves and how they dress. It's an extension of their character. All right? Then I've got other people that I've met who are part of what I call the false modesty movement. The types where, you're at a feast gathering, you say, oh my gosh, that's a beautiful dress. And they say, yes, I'm wearing it for modesty. Okay. Or, what a beautiful headscarf. Yes, I used to wear my head uncovered, but I decided to be modest. Well, I mean, that's a shaming technique. That's saying, I'm doing this to be modest, therefore anyone else who isn't doing this, by definition, by extension, isn't modest. It's not gentle. It's not gentle. Whereas my modest friends, I say, oh my gosh, that is a beautiful dress. They say, oh, thank you. I saw it and I just loved it. You know, I mean, they say the normal things that women say about clothes, or, oh my gosh, that's a gorgeous headscarf. I found it at X, and if you'd like, or I'll give you the web address because, oh my gosh, she sells the most beautiful scarves. That's gentle. That's extending dignity. That is modesty. Gentleness is, or the lack thereof, is always tied to where our focus is. If our focus is on helping people, really, really helping people, because a lot of people think that they're interested in helping people, but really what they're interested in is conforming everyone to their own standards. And so they look at the world in disapproval. It's like, if you can't be on, social media or anything without, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, that status is wrong. Well, they just benefited from my wisdom. I'm assuming a touch screen here. That's why this is happening. If you feel like the world cannot survive without being at least as self-righteous as you are, then that's going to come through in a lack of kindness, a lack of meekness, a lack of humility, lack of dignity, and it's going to result in shaming people. We have to learn to pull ourselves back. We have to learn that the world doesn't have to be like us. The world doesn't have to all agree with us. The world did fine without our input before we came on the picture, and it'll do fine without our input after we're long gone. But gentleness. Gentleness means that we don't see ourselves as being all that. That we hold ourselves in the proper amount of esteem. You know what esteem I deserve? I deserve esteem for being a child of God. Not being the child of God, like I'm the one that sets the bar, but as somebody who is just incredibly grateful to be here. Somebody whose life shouldn't set the bar for anything. Someone whose wisdom should certainly not set the bar for anything. If you see me doing something good and you want to imitate me because you think it's like our King, great. But oh my gosh, there are so many areas where I just have such a major disconnect with how God wants me to live. I'm sure He'll show me that it's hard to get extremely prideful. It's hard to not extend people dignity when I see the dignity that He's extended to me, even in times where I have fallen so entirely short. God Himself has extended to me dignity in times when I didn't deserve it. He's given me credit for doing things right when I wasn't doing all that much right. To be gentle, to be meek, to be courteous, to be humble, I have got to look at what people are doing right. I've got to give them credit for what they're doing right. Otherwise, I won't be gentle. Otherwise, I'll be bearing bad fruit. So, anyway, that's the second to the last small bite of fruit. We'll be doing self-control next, and maybe I'll have that mastered in 5 years and you'll see another video. But anyway, back to writing curriculum for homeschool. Honor and shame. Looking forward to that. And hopefully you'll be seeing that soon. Anyway, have a really, really wonderful day. Shalom.